You seriously drive that? Emily's voice cut through the garage like a spotlight, sharp and impossible to ignore. I froze mid-turn, hands gripping the steering wheel of my 10-year-old sedan. The paint faded to a dull silver, and the bumper slightly askew from a minor scrape last winter. Her friend's laughter spilled from the kitchen doorway, a cascade of mockery I could feel in my chest, echoing off the concrete walls and the shelves stacked with tools and car parts. I forced a tight smile, pretending not to hear, pretending the sting wasn't real, even though every word sank deeper than I expected. I'd been proud of this car once, proud that it ran strong, that I maintained it myself, that it had seen me through countless late-night drives, Friday errands, and road trips with my old college buddies. But at that moment, it was a punchline, a symbol of inadequacy under the fluorescent lights of our suburban home. Emily's eyes glittered with amusement. That same playful edge I had loved once now twisted into something sharp, assessing, evaluating every flaw and imperfection in me as much as the car. I exhaled slowly, keeping my voice steady as I said, "It's still running, isn't it?" The words were calm, almost boring, but inside, my heart pounded like the engine of an old Mustang racing down an empty highway. I could feel the tension coil in my shoulders, the heat rise at the base of my neck. A familiar mix of anger and hurt tempered by years of knowing exactly when to stay silent. I glanced at her, the emerald blouse she wore catching the sunlight filtering through the garage door, and remembered the early days when she had smiled at me like I was the only man in the world, when her laughter was a melody rather than a weapon. Now, that smile was a mask, flawless, but brittle at the edges, and I understood instantly that the woman who had once adored me had chosen to become my critic instead. I placed my hand lightly on the steering wheel, felt the familiar leather and worn texture beneath my fingers, and let myself think, quietly, deliberately, about all the nights I had stayed late at work, all the weekends I had spent fixing this very car myself, all the small sacrifices unnoticed, unacknowledged, but not lost. The hum of the fluorescent lights overhead mingled with the distant sound of laughter, and for a moment, I allowed the sting to settle, to become a fuel rather than a wound. I thought about the way her friends looked at me, their eyes bright with amusement, and how easy it had been for Emily to let their approval validate her scorn. And in that stillness, in the quiet heartbeat of a moment that seemed to stretch into forever, I began to plot, not with rage that burned and consumed, but with precision, patience, and a vision that only years of restraint could forge. This car, this small emblem of my ordinary life, would be the seed of an extraordinary reversal. I imagined the dealership she had always admired, the glossy floors, the rows of brand-new vehicles reflecting the bright overhead lights like liquid silver, and I pictured myself, in the not-so-distant future, standing there not as a laughingstock, not as the man to be pitied, but as the one holding the keys, the papers, the power that had been quietly accumulating under the surface all along. Emily's laughter rang out again, louder this time, and I let a slow smile curve on my lips, controlled, calm, unshakable, because beneath it, I was already moving in silence, already calculating, already preparing the steps that would turn her mockery into astonishment, her derision into disbelief, and the ordinary garage where I had been humiliated into the launching point of my quiet, inevitable triumph. That night, after Emily's friends left and the house sank into the polished silence she liked to call peaceful, I sat alone in the garage with the lights off and the driver's door open. The old sedan still ticked softly from the short drive I had taken around the block, the engine cooling in the dark like it was breathing beside me. I did not go inside right away. I knew what waited there. Emily would be in the living room, scrolling through her phone, pretending the jokes had been harmless, pretending I was too sensitive if I brought it up, pretending a husband should be grateful for whatever tone his wife decided to use. So I stayed where the truth felt. Simpler. Concrete floor. Oil stain near the workbench. A toolbox my father gave me before he retired. The faint smell of gasoline and dust. Things that did not lie. Things that did not dress cruelty up as humor. My name is Jack Thompson. I was 42 years old, born in Ohio, raised by a man who believed you paid your bills before you bought anything shiny. My father drove the same pickup truck for 21 years, not because he could not afford another one, but because he said a good machine deserved loyalty if it gave loyalty back. I used to laugh at that when I was younger. Then life taught me how rare loyalty really was. I built my career quietly, first as a service technician, then as a regional operations consultant for struggling auto businesses across the Midwest. I was the guy dealerships called when their numbers were bleeding and nobody understood why. I knew inventory turns, floor plan financing, service department margins, warranty reimbursement, sales training, customer retention, and the difference between a business that looked successful under bright showroom lights and one that was dying behind the accounting office door. Emily knew some of that, but not all of it. In her mind, my work was boring. Spreadsheets, calls, travel, gray suits, and airport coffee. She saw the old car in the driveway and decided that was the full measure of me. That was the mistake she kept making. She confused quiet with empty. She confused simple with small. When I finally walked into the house, she did not look up right away. The television was on mute, blue light washing across the living room walls. Her wine glass sat on the coffee table, half full. Her phone glowed in her hand. She smiled faintly, the way people smile when they expect the world to forgive them before they apologize. "You disappeared," she said. I hung my jacket on the chair. I went for a drive. Her eyes flicked toward the garage door, and the corner of her mouth moved. In that thing. There it was again, smaller this time, but still sharp enough to find the same place. I nodded once. "Yes, Emily. In that thing." The room shifted. Not dramatically. Not in a way anyone else would notice. But, after 15 years of marriage, you learn the weather inside a house. You learn when the air changes. She set her phone down and sighed like I had inconvenienced her with my dignity. "Jack, come on." It was a joke. You know how the girls are. I looked at her for a long second, and what hurt most was not the sentence. It was how rehearsed it sounded, like she had already defended herself in her head and found me guilty of overreacting. "They were laughing at me," I said. My voice stayed even. That surprised both of us. She crossed one leg over the other. "They were laughing at the car." I almost smiled. That was the kind of difference people create when they do not want to feel responsible. Same thing, when you say it the way you said it. She rolled her eyes, not fully, just enough to make sure I saw it. "Maybe I am tired of pulling up places in a car that looks like it belongs in a student parking lot. I work hard too, Jack. I like nice things. I do not think that makes me a terrible person." I stood there with my hand resting on the back of the chair, feeling the old familiar instinct rise in me. Explain yourself. Defend yourself. Tell her about the savings account, the investments, the years of careful choices, the reason you never chased appearances. But a strange calm settled over me instead. The kind of calm that does not come from peace. It comes from a decision being made somewhere deep inside you. "No," I said. "Liking nice things does not make you terrible." She softened slightly, thinking she had won. Then I added, "Looking down on people who do not perform well for you does." Her face changed. Not much. Just enough. The polished expression cracked at the edges, and behind it I saw irritation, not shame. That told me everything I needed to know. She stood, gathered her glass, and walked toward the kitchen. "I am not doing this tonight." Her voice floated back over her shoulder. "I have a client brunch tomorrow, and I need sleep." I watched her leave, heels clicking against hardwood like punctuation marks at the end of a conversation she thought she controlled. But something in me had stopped following her. I went upstairs later, brushed my teeth, changed, and lay beside her in the dark while she slept facing away from me. The ceiling fan turned slowly above us, slicing the shadows into soft, moving pieces. My phone rested on the nightstand, and I stared at it until the numbers on the clock changed from 11:58 to 11:59. Then midnight. A new day. I reached for the phone, opened my email, and searched a name I had not thought about in months. Franklin Ridge Motors. The dealership Emily adored. The one with the marble floors, the espresso bar, the European sedans lined up like jewelry. The place she visited twice a year just to browse and dream out loud. 3 months earlier, its owner had called me privately. Declining sales. Bloated payroll. A service department losing money. A family succession problem nobody wanted to admit. He had asked whether I knew any serious buyers. At the time, I told him I would think about it. Now, in the dark beside the woman who had mistaken my restraint for weakness, I opened that old message and read it again. The opportunity had been sitting there quietly, waiting for me to become the kind of man who would stop asking to be respected and start proving why disrespect had been expensive. The next morning, I woke before sunrise, the sky a soft gray over the suburban rooftops. I did not immediately go to the kitchen or turn on the coffee maker. Instead, I sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the faint hum of traffic from the street below, feeling the quiet pulse of a city that was awake but not yet moving. Emily was still asleep, her breathing even, her face turned slightly away from me as though she were already retreating from the day. I let the moment stretch, letting the stillness fill the room, because I knew that every great plan begins with understanding the landscape before making the first move. Sliding out of bed, I pulled on jeans and a button-down shirt, keeping my movements deliberate, slow, almost meditative. The scent of morning air drifted through the open window, carrying with it the faint smell of dew on grass and asphalt warming under the early sun. I went down to the garage, the old sedan still parked where I had left it, tires facing out as if ready to leave on command. I opened the driver's side door, reached under the seat, and retrieved a folder I had kept tucked away for months, containing documents, notes, and spreadsheets related to the dealership opportunity one had discovered weeks earlier. I spread the papers across the hood of the car, letting the sunlight illuminate every detail, every number, every margin that could be leveraged, every contract and communication that pointed to the possibility of ownership. I traced the lines with my finger, reading each detail carefully, absorbing the rhythm of the business as if I had been born to understand it. This was not impulsive, it was methodical. Every calculation, every figure, every timeline had been running quietly in my mind, forming a strategy that Emily could not anticipate. I imagined the dealership showroom, the polished floors, the rows of cars gleaming under perfect lights, and the espresso bar in the corner where she liked to linger, imagining a life that she admired but had dismissed me for failing to provide. The thought of turning that dream into reality with my own hands, my own money, my own planning, filled me with a calm satisfaction, a quiet power that required no applause. I poured a cup of coffee, black, letting the warmth seep through my hands as I sat back against the hood, looking over the folder again, confirming each step, each contingency, each alternative path to ensure success. My mind wandered briefly to Emily, thinking about the casual disdain she had shown yesterday, the almost imperceptible smirk she gave when mentioning the car. That smirk, that single moment, became fuel. Not for anger, not for revenge in the emotional sense, but as motivation to execute a plan that would be flawless, undeniable, and complete. I made a mental checklist, reviewing what needed to be done. Initial contact with the current owner, legal consultations to confirm purchase options, financial arrangements, and timelines that would coincide with a public reveal she could not ignore. I considered every possible outcome, every misstep to avoid, every way she might try to insert doubt or disruption. Everything was accounted for. Hours passed as I sat in the garage, drinking coffee and organizing the folder, yet the quiet intensity never wavered. By mid-morning, I had drafted emails, made phone calls, and spoken to trusted advisors, each interaction reinforcing that this was the path I had chosen deliberately, with patience and precision. I could feel the anticipation building, but it was tempered by control. There was no haste, no need for dramatics. The moment of revelation would be perfect because it would be calculated, inevitable, and undeniable. Around noon, I finally returned to the house, placing the folder back in a secure location where it would be safe, untouched, invisible. Emily was in the kitchen, pouring herself a glass of water, the sunlight catching in her hair. She looked up as I passed, offering a polite, casual smile that masked the undercurrent of yesterday's amusement. I nodded in acknowledgement, voice steady as ever. "Morning," I said. "Morning," she replied, eyes briefly flicking toward me, probably measuring my reaction, assessing whether I had lingered on the previous day's embarrassment. I let her think what she wanted. She had no idea that by the end of this week, everything she assumed about me would be rewritten, quietly, deliberately, and completely under my control. The garage, the folder, the careful calculations, the patience and observation, all were steps toward a revelation that would transform a simple suburban day into a demonstration of quiet power and precise execution, the kind that left no room for doubt, no opportunity for interruption, and no possibility of overlooking the fact that respect and recognition, once withheld, could be reclaimed with discipline, intelligence, and timing. By Wednesday afternoon, the first real door opened, and it opened with a phone call from a man who sounded more tired than he wanted anyone to know. His name was Walter Franklin, the owner of Franklin Ridge Motors, 71 years old, second-generation dealer, local sponsor of every charity dinner Emily had ever dragged me to with a smile that did not reach her eyes. I had met him twice in person and spoken to him enough times to know the weight behind his pauses. Men like Walter did not ask for help until pride had already lost the argument. I was sitting in my office with a legal pad in front of me, the blinds half closed against the late summer sun, when he said, "Jack, I need a clean exit." I did not lean back. I did not smile. I simply placed my pen on the table and listened. That is one thing people underestimate about quiet men. We hear everything. Walter told me what the public did not see. The showroom still looked perfect, all glass walls and spotless floors, but underneath the shine, the place was struggling. New inventory sat too long. The service department was understaffed. The finance office had grown sloppy. His son wanted the cash, but not the responsibility. His daughter lived in Scottsdale and had no interest in flying back to Ohio to save a business she considered old-fashioned. The bank was patient, but not forever. He had two possible buyers circling, both private groups from out of state, both planning to cut staff, strip the place down, and turn it into another cold franchise box with no soul. "I do not want that," Walter said. "My name is on that sign." I looked through the glass wall of my office at the parking lot below, where my old sedan sat between two new trucks owned by younger managers who loved payments more than ownership. Sunlight flashed across the worn hood, and for a second, I saw my father's pickup, the one he refused to replace because he knew value did not always shine. "Then do not sell it to them," I said. Walter gave a low laugh, but there was no humor in it. "That easy." "Not easy," I said. "Clean." Silence moved through the line. Not empty silence. Thinking silence. I could almost see him in that big corner office above the showroom, fingers around a coffee mug, looking down at the business that had carried his family for decades. He asked if I had a buyer in mind. I said yes. He asked if the buyer understood dealerships. I said better than most. Then he asked the question that changed the air in the room. "Is it you?" I looked down at my legal pad. At the top, I had written 3 words that morning: timing, control, dignity. Not revenge. Not payback. Dignity. Because that was what Emily had laughed at without understanding. A man's dignity does not always leave when he is insulted. Sometimes it waits, takes notes, and chooses its moment. "Yes," I said. "It is me." Walter did not speak for nearly 5 seconds. I counted them without meaning to. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then he exhaled. "I was hoping you would say that." By 4 o'clock, I was in my car driving across town, wearing the same navy blazer Emily once said made me look like a middle manager at a rental company conference. The comment had been small, almost disposable. Funny how those are the ones that stay. The sedan hummed along the interstate, steady at 65 miles per hour, the dashboard faintly rattling on rough patches of pavement. I passed new subdivisions, chain restaurants, gas stations, and the wide American sprawl where dreams and debt often park side by side. Franklin Ridge Motors appeared just before the exit, its sign rising over the road in polished chrome letters. Emily loved that sign. She used to point at it whenever we drove by, saying, "One day, I am getting something from there." Not we. I noticed it even then. I pulled into the lot and parked near the service entrance instead of the front doors. Habit. I preferred the parts of a business where the truth lived. Showrooms were theater. Service bays were confession booths. A salesman in a fitted gray suit glanced at my car, then looked away with the soft dismissal people use when they have already priced you in their head. I almost thanked him for proving the point. Inside, the air smelled like leather, coffee, floor wax, and expensive ambition. Bright vehicles sat under white lights, spotless enough to reflect every insecurity customers brought through the doors. Walter met me near the reception desk, walking slower than I remembered, but still carrying himself like the building knew who owned it. He shook my hand with both of his. "Glad you came." "Me too," I said. We went upstairs to his office. From there, I could see the entire showroom below. A young couple circling a sport utility vehicle. A retired man studying a window sticker. 2 salesmen whispering. near the espresso bar, and near the front, displayed on a rotating platform, was a pearl-white luxury convertible, the exact model Emily had once photographed and sent to her friends with the caption, "Someday." I looked at it for half a second longer than I should have. Walter noticed. "Popular car," he said. "My wife likes it," I replied. The word wife felt different in my mouth now, not broken, but heavier, as if it had picked up consequences. Walter opened a folder and slid it across the desk. Financials, debt obligations, inventory reports, property valuation, pending vendor issues, staff structure, everything clean enough to review, messy enough to explain why he wanted out. I read in silence. He did not interrupt. Men who have built things understand the respect of silence. After 20 minutes, I closed the folder and looked at him. "This place is not dying," I said. "It is being neglected." His eyes narrowed, not angry, just wounded by accuracy. "Can you fix it?" "Yes." "Can you close fast?" I thought of Emily laughing in the garage. I thought of the way her friends looked at me like my value had four wheels and faded paint. I thought of every year I had spent choosing long-term strength over short-term applause. "Faster than the out-of-state buyers," I said. Walter nodded slowly. Downstairs, the showroom lights glowed against the glass, and for the first time, I felt the shape of the future become solid. Not a fantasy, not a reaction. A contract waiting for signatures. A key waiting for a hand. A lesson waiting for the person who thought I had none left to teach. Walter did not ask me to sign anything that afternoon, and I respected him more for that. Men who rush signatures usually fear what silence will reveal. Instead, he walked me through the dealership like a father showing a doctor where the patient hurt. The showroom looked flawless from a distance, but up close, I saw the little fractures. A sales board with too many stale leads. 3 empty desks where experienced people used to sit. A service advisor juggling 2 phone calls with the exhausted patience of someone doing the work of 3 employees. A stack of customer satisfaction surveys, sitting unopened near the copier. Every business speaks if you know how to listen. This one was not screaming. It was asking for someone to pay attention. Walter stood beside me near the service bay doors while a technician guided a dark blue sport utility vehicle onto a lift. "They all think the problem is sales," he said quietly. "It is not." I watched the technician move with careful efficiency, wiping his hands before touching the driver's seat cover, checking the tablet twice, calling over a younger mechanic to explain something instead of just doing it himself. That man was worth keeping. "The problem is trust," I said. Walter looked at me. Customers can smell panic. Employees can smell neglect. When both happen at once, the numbers follow. He studied me for a long moment, then gave a slow nod, the kind that meant he was not hearing theory. He was hearing diagnosis. By 6 o'clock, I was back in my old sedan with a copy of the financial packet locked in my briefcase and a quiet fire under my ribs. The sun had dropped low, turning the windshield gold, and traffic crawled along the interstate like every tired person in Ohio had chosen the same road home. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. "Emily." I let it ring twice before answering through the car speakers. "Where are you?" she asked, not worried, just irritated. "Finishing a work matter." A pause. "You said you would be home by 5:30. I said I would try." The line went quiet, but I could hear the shape of her annoyance. She never liked it when I became difficult to schedule. "We have dinner with Lauren and Mark tomorrow night," she said. "At Hudson Grill. Do not forget." I remembered. Emily had mentioned it twice, mostly because Lauren had just leased a new luxury crossover, and Emily wanted to sit across from someone who understood the language of upgrades, badges, and monthly payments. "I will be there," I said. "And Jack?" "Yes." Her voice softened into the tone she used when delivering something wrapped in concern but filled with criticism. "Maybe we should take my car." "No offense." "No offense." The phrase people use right before they offend you on purpose. I looked at the hood of my sedan at the faint vibration from the engine, at the dashboard clock glowing 6:12. "Sure," I said. "We can take yours." "Thank you," she replied, relieved, as if I had spared her a social burden. After we hung up, I drove the rest of the way in silence. Not angry silence. Accounting silence. The kind where every word gets filed where it belongs. At home, Emily was in the kitchen wearing a cream sweater, her laptop open on the counter, a candle burning near the sink to make the house smell like vanilla and money. She did not ask about my day. She asked whether I had seen the reminder for dinner. I said yes. She asked whether I had picked up the dry cleaning. I said I would do it in the morning. She asked whether I had thought more about replacing the car. I set my keys in the bowl by the door, the same bowl she once bought from a boutique because she said details mattered. I have thought about it, I said. Her eyes lifted, suddenly interested. And I loosened my tie and looked at her across the island. I am considering a few options. For the first time all week, she smiled at me like I had finally stepped onto the path she approved of. Good. Honestly, Jack, it is time. You work hard. You should look like it. That sentence stayed with me. Not because it was cruel, exactly. Because it revealed the whole architecture of her thinking. To Emily, work was not real until strangers could see it. Value did not count unless it arrived polished, financed, and parked under bright lights. I nodded once and walked upstairs before my face could betray the truth. In my office, I closed the door, opened my laptop, and called my attorney, Daniel Price. Daniel and I had known each other for 12 years. He handled business acquisitions with the dry calm of a surgeon and the humor of a man who billed in 6-minute increments. Franklin Ridge, he said after I explained. That is not a small bite. I know. Do you want my cautious answer or my honest answer? Both. Cautious answer, there are risks. Real estate, manufacturer approval, employee retention, existing debt, vendor contracts, and whatever family emotions Walter has not disclosed. Honest answer? Daniel paused. You were built for this kind of mess. I looked through the office window at the driveway below. Emily's newer car sat closest to the house, spotless under the porch light. My sedan sat behind it, older, lower, quiet. It looked almost patient. I want the letter of intent drafted tonight, I said. Clean terms. Fast due diligence. Asset purchase unless you see a reason otherwise. Keep my name out of casual conversation until we are ready. Daniel was silent for a beat. Does Emily know? I turned from the window. No. Are you buying a dealership or making a point? That question should have bothered me. It did not. Maybe because the answer was not simple. I am buying a business I understand, I said. And yes, Daniel, I am also making a point. He gave a short breath that might have been a laugh. Then we do it carefully. Carefully. That was the word. Not loudly. Not foolishly. Carefully. By midnight, the draft arrived in my inbox. I read every line while the house slept around me. The only sound the soft hum of the vent and the distant passing of cars on the road outside. Purchase structure. Confidentiality. Employee transition. Service department review. Real estate option. Closing timeline. My name appeared on the final page in plain black text, quiet and almost ordinary. I stared at it for a long time. Then I printed the document, signed the acknowledgement page for review, and placed it in the folder beside Walter's financials. Down the hall, Emily slept peacefully, believing tomorrow night's dinner would be another small stage where my old car could be hidden, my pride managed, and her image protected. She had no idea that while she planned which handbag to carry, I was preparing to buy the very place where she measured dreams in leather seats and chrome. The dinner at Hudson Grill should have been forgettable, the kind of Thursday night obligation couples survive with polite smiles and overpriced salmon, but it became another entry in the ledger I was learning not to ignore. Emily drove, of course. Her car smelled like citrus leather cleaner and the little vanilla air freshener she kept hidden under the passenger seat because she said visible air. Fresheners looked cheap. I sat beside her in a navy sport coat, watching porch lights slide across the windshield as we moved through the neighborhood at 35 miles per hour. She was in a good mood, which meant she believed the evening would make her look good. Lauren is bringing the new crossover, she said, tapping the steering wheel with one manicured finger. Mark says it has every option. Heated steering wheel, panoramic roof, massaging seats, all of it. Sounds nice, I said. It is more than nice, Jack. It is what adults buy when they stop pretending practicality is a personality. There it was, delivered softly, almost elegantly, like a compliment that had lost its way and turned into a bruise. I looked out the window at a gas station glowing under white lights, at a man filling an older pickup with regular unleaded, his shoulders relaxed, his world not requiring applause. Practicality built a lot of things, I said. Emily gave a small laugh. So did ambition. I turned toward her. I never lacked ambition. She did not answer immediately. That was worse than disagreement. That was evaluation. You just hide it very well, she said at last. We pulled into the restaurant lot at 7 minutes past 7. Lauren and Mark were already there, standing beside a pearl gray luxury crossover that looked freshly detailed and aggressively financed. Lauren waved with both hands, her bracelets flashing under the parking lot lights. Mark had the kind of grin men wear when they want other men to ask about horsepower, trim packages, and monthly payments. Emily stepped out with a brightness I had not seen at home in months. "Oh my gosh, it is gorgeous," she said, circling the vehicle as if greeting royalty. Mark unlocked it, and the mirrors unfolded with a mechanical flourish. "Top trim," he said. "Dealer gave us a great number." I almost asked whether he understood that a great number for the dealer and a great number for the buyer were rarely the same number, but I held it. Lauren opened the driver's door so Emily could lean in and admire the stitched seats, the widescreen, the ambient lighting. "This is what I keep telling Jack," Emily said, still half. Inside the vehicle, "Life is too short to drive something embarrassing." The word landed in the cool evening air between the four of us. "Embarrassing," Mark chuckled, then caught himself when he saw my face had not changed. Lauren gave that quick nervous smile people use when they hope a joke has not become too honest. I buttoned my jacket calmly. "Cars do tell stories," I said. Emily straightened and turned toward me. Exactly. She thought I had agreed with her. That almost made me sad. Inside, the restaurant was all warm wood, low lights, clinking glasses, and servers moving fast enough to look graceful. We were seated near a window, and for the first 20 minutes, the conversation stayed harmless. Work, vacations, property taxes, the Browns. Mark talked about a sales director he knew at Franklin Ridge Motors and how the dealership was the only place in town that still treated people with class. Emily nodded eagerly. "I love that place," she said. "They just understand presentation. Everything feels elevated." I took a sip of water and felt the clean cold pass down my throat. "Presentation can hide a lot," I said. Mark laughed. "Spoken like a man who hates salespeople." "No," I replied. "Spoken like a man who reads balance sheets." The table paused for half a second, then moved on without knowing what they had missed. Emily touched my arm under the table, a warning disguised as affection. "Do not be strange. Do not make people uncomfortable. Do not reveal more of yourself than I have decided is useful." I looked at her hand, then at her face, and something old inside me stepped back from the marriage by 1 quiet inch. After dinner, while Lauren and Emily went to the restroom, Mark leaned toward me over the empty dessert plates. "You know, Jack, I can give you my guy's number at the dealership. He might get you into something respectable without too much pain." He meant well enough. That was the thing about small humiliations. Not all of them came from enemies. Some came from people repeating the story your own wife had taught them. "I appreciate it," I said, "but I may already have a contact there." "Oh yeah, something like that." He nodded, unconvinced, then looked out at the parking lot where his new crossover sat under a light pole like a trophy. "Smart to upgrade before your car starts costing more than it is worth." I almost told him that worth was a dangerous word in the mouth of a man who still owed the bank most of what he admired. Instead, I folded my napkin. I will keep that in mind. On the drive home, Emily was quiet at first, which meant she was choosing her angle. The road shone faintly from a light drizzle, reflecting red brake lights in long wet streaks. "You were odd tonight," she said finally. Was I? A little defensive. Mark was only trying to help. With my embarrassing situation, her fingers tightened on the wheel. "I did not mean it like that." "You said it like that." The windshield wipers swept once, then again, clearing the glass only for new drops to appear. That was marriage sometimes, I thought. Clear one thing, and another immediately takes its place. "I just want better for us," she said. It was a beautiful sentence from a distance. Up close it had teeth. "For us," I repeated. "Or for how we look." She exhaled sharply and turned into our subdivision. "I am too tired for one of your philosophical conversations." We pulled into the driveway behind my old sedan. Her headlights washed over its faded trunk, the small scratch near the taillight, the license plate frame from a dealership that had closed 8 years ago. She stared at it with open disappointment. I stared at it with gratitude. That car had carried me through hard years, honest years, years when Emily's admiration was still possible because she had not yet confused shine with substance. Upstairs, after she changed and went to bed without another word, I returned to my office and opened my laptop. An email from Daniel waited at the top of my inbox. Revised letter of intent attached. Walter is prepared to move if you are. I read the sentence twice. Then I opened the attachment, checked the terms, and saw the future step closer. The closing timeline was aggressive but possible. The confidentiality clause was tight. Financing was ready through a private capital line I had built years ago and never mentioned at dinner. Tables. I placed my hands flat on the desk, breathing slowly. Downstairs, 2 cars sat in the driveway. One chosen for image. One kept for value. By the end of the month, neither would matter as much as the building with Franklin's name on it. The one Emily loved for its shine and I understood from its bones. The following morning, sunlight spilled through the blinds in thin, precise lines, cutting across my office desk like measuring sticks. I poured a cup of black coffee, the steam curling upward, and sat at the laptop, reviewing the final drafts of contracts, purchase agreements, and employee transition plans. Every clause had been double-checked, each number confirmed, and contingencies accounted for. The sense of quiet anticipation filled the room, a calm energy that felt heavier than excitement and sharper than any adrenaline I had felt during my career. Downstairs, Emily moved about the house, the sound of her heels against the hardwood floors faint but distinct, signaling her routine morning, her plans, her belief that everything was still ordinary. She did not yet know the magnitude of the shift I had set into motion. I scrolled through the email chain one last time, noting the confirmations from Walter, the approvals from the lender, and the responses from the key employees who would be essential to maintaining continuity in the dealership. Their trust in my discretion, built over months of careful conversation, gave me a sense of control that was rare and satisfying. I glanced at the clock. 7:45. If I wanted to keep the flow, I would need to move fast. I shut the laptop and carried the folder of signed documents down the stairs, careful not to disturb anything on the counters. Emily was now in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared breakfast, the aroma of toast and brewed coffee filling the air, masking the faint tension I carried with me like an invisible coat. "Good morning," she said, turning toward me with a smile that was bright, casual, and completely unaware. "Morning," I replied, setting the folder on the counter. She glanced at it, curiosity piqued, but said nothing. "Are you ready for your appointment?" she asked. I nodded. "Yes, I have a meeting at Franklin Ridge." Her eyes widened slightly. "Early?" "Yes," I said calmly. "We have details to finalize." She nodded, then turned to get her coffee, still unaware that I would be the final piece of that puzzle by the afternoon. I finished my breakfast quickly, observing her ease as a contrast to the deliberate precision I had been carrying since the previous week. Every step, every contact, every calculation led to this day. Driving the old sedan toward the dealership, I felt the familiar rhythm of the engine under my hands, the worn leather steering wheel grounding me, reminding me of years of careful decisions, patient moves, and unspoken discipline. The city passed quietly, with the early morning light glinting off storefronts and parked cars. I arrived at Franklin Ridge Motors just before 8:30, the lot gleaming in the morning sun, the shadows of the buildings stretching long across the asphalt. Walter met me at the entrance, and without a word, we walked into his office together. The staff were already at their stations, oblivious to the silent change about to take place. I laid out the folder on the large oak desk, opened to the first page of the purchase agreement. Walter nodded, signaling his readiness to proceed. I signed the documents methodically, each pen stroke deliberate, visible only to those who needed to see it. The dealership was mine, though not in a dramatic reveal yet. The power of ownership, the quiet satisfaction of control, settled deep into my chest like the warmth of a fire that had been building unseen for months. Outside, Emily drove past the lot without knowing, her mind occupied with errands and plans for a brunch later, unaware that the structure of the place she admired most had shifted entirely in my favor. By 9 o'clock, the agreements were fully executed, accounts transitioned, and key employees briefed. The morning sunlight had grown warmer, softer, illuminating the showroom in a way that highlighted both its beauty and its potential. I walked through the showroom, inspecting each detail, feeling the pulse of a place that now bore my responsibility and my mark. The cars gleamed under the bright lights, polished to perfection, waiting for the first customer to notice the seamless flow, the subtle changes, the integrity of operations. I paused near the pearl-white convertible, the very one Emily had photographed and admired, imagining her eyes when she would next see it. I could already hear the quiet disbelief in her tone, the astonishment that comes when expectation and reality collide in a way they had not anticipated. As I stepped outside to the front of the dealership, breathing in the crisp morning air, I looked back at the building, the rows of vehicles, the clean lines, and felt the full weight of accomplishment, discipline, and patient strategy coalesce. The city continued around me, oblivious to the quiet revolution I had orchestrated. But for me, the moment was complete. A transition not announced with fanfare, but with precision, control, and the inevitability of success, ready to be revealed at the perfect time. By mid-afternoon, I was back home, parking the old sedan in the driveway as the sun tilted toward the west, casting long shadows across the neighborhood. Emily was in the kitchen, her phone in hand, scrolling through messages, unaware that the course of her day and the perception she had of my life was already altered. I carried the folder of executed agreements and placed it on the counter, taking a moment to enjoy the stillness, the hum of the refrigerator, the faint aroma of the leftover coffee I had brewed that morning. She looked up briefly, curious, then returned to her messages, tapping out a short reply, completely unaware. I did not speak. There was no rush, no need for spectacle. The subtlety of timing is often more powerful than loud confrontation. I moved to the living room, setting my briefcase next to the armchair, and surveyed the space, noting the small details, the pictures on the wall, the books Emily kept stacked on the coffee table, the small decorative pieces she thought defined taste. Each one reminded me of a past where pride and perception outweighed reality, a past I had spent silently observing and understanding. I opened the briefcase and reviewed the documents once more, confirming the final signatures, financing arrangements, and contingency plans. Each step was methodical, deliberate, leaving nothing to chance. I could feel the weight of ownership not as a burden, but as a quiet, satisfying presence, the kind that only comes from preparation, patience, and understanding the rules others assume they control. Outside, the neighborhood continued its afternoon rhythm. Children biked slowly along sidewalks. Sprinklers sprayed faint arcs of water across freshly mown lawns. Neighbors waved politely as they carried groceries or dog leashes. In that calm, I considered the upcoming moments, the precise way Emily would realize that what she once measured by appearances had been quietly redefined. I imagined her expression, the moment the reality registered, the disbelief that would mix with every assumption she had made about my capabilities and decisions. There was no anger in my anticipation, only the quiet satisfaction of a plan carried out correctly, a balance restored not through confrontation, but through competence and timing. I sat back in the chair, coffee in hand, letting the afternoon sun warm my face, listening to the faint sounds of traffic from the street and the soft ticking of the wall clock. The house felt larger than usual, almost expectant, as though it too understood that the next steps would shift the balance in ways visible and invisible. Emily moved from the kitchen to the living room, carrying a small tray with tea and a few biscuits, placing it on the coffee table with a gentle clink. "I thought you might want a snack," she said, smiling faintly, assuming normalcy continued unbroken. "Thank you," I replied, calm, deliberate. Her eyes searched mine briefly for signs of agitation, for any indication of a reaction that might alert her to the difference, but she found only measured composure. That composure had been built over years of observation, experience, and quiet planning. I thought about how often she had dismissed subtle strength as weakness, patience as inaction, and understanding as ignorance. Now, each of those assumptions had been carefully accounted for, and soon, each would be challenged without question. Afternoon light shifted to golden hues, painting the living room walls in long, warm streaks. I looked toward the window, toward the driveway, imagining the cars parked below and the world that assumed the same rules applied inside the house. I sipped my coffee slowly, considering the briefings with Walter, the executed documents, and the arrangements that had taken weeks of patient work to align. Every employee, every detail, Every line in the contracts had been orchestrated to ensure that when the moment came, there would be no ambiguity, no opportunity for dispute, and a visible, undeniable realization of results. Emily moved to the window, peering out briefly, then back at her phone. I waited, quietly, letting the tension of anticipation fill the space in small increments, knowing that the impact of subtlety often carried more weight than any immediate declaration. The day would continue its rhythm, but the shape of our lives, the perception of what was possible, and the balance of control had already shifted irrevocably, quietly, and irrevocably in my favor. The reveal did not happen that night, and that was intentional. Timing is not just about choosing the right moment. It is about letting the wrong moments pass without touching them. Emily spent the evening moving through the house with that soft confidence she wore when she believed the world had finally returned to its proper order. She made tea, answered emails, checked her calendar, and mentioned twice that Lauren wanted to meet for coffee Saturday morning near the dealership district. "Maybe we will stop by Franklin Ridge afterward," she said from the kitchen, casual on the surface, hopeful underneath. "Lauren wants to show me the interior colors they have in stock. She says they have a pearl white convertible that is absolutely stunning." I was seated at the dining table with my laptop open, reviewing a transition memo from Daniel. I did not look up too quickly. Quick reactions reveal hidden things. "That sounds like a nice afternoon," I said. Emily appeared in the doorway, studying me with a faint smile. "You do not mind?" "Why would I mind?" "I do not know," she said, lifting one shoulder. "You have been sensitive about car talk lately." Sensitive. Another neat little word that moved blame from the person holding the match to the person smelling smoke. I closed the laptop slowly. "Go enjoy yourself." She smiled wider, satisfied, and walked away. The next morning, I arrived at Franklin Ridge before the doors opened, the sky still pale and the asphalt still dark from overnight rain. The sign glowed above the lot like a promise somebody had forgotten to keep. Inside, the first staff meeting under my ownership took place in the service lounge before customers arrived. Walter stood beside me, looking relieved and strangely younger, as if surrendering the burden had returned something to his bones. Around us stood the people who kept the place alive. Technicians in clean work shirts, sales consultants holding coffee cups, reception staff, finance managers, detail crew, service advisors, parts department employees. Some looked worried. Some looked curious. A few looked tired enough to be suspicious of hope. I understood that. Hope costs energy when you have been disappointed too often. Walter cleared his throat and told them the business had changed hands. He did not make it dramatic. He did not oversell it. Then he looked at me. I stepped forward, hands relaxed, voice steady. "My name is Jack Thompson. I know some of you have heard of me. Some of you have not. I am not here to strip this place down. I am not here to cut good people so a spreadsheet looks prettier for one quarter. I am here because this dealership still has a future, and I believe the people standing in this room are the reason." No one cheered. Real workers do not cheer at speeches before 8 o'clock in the morning. They listen for the part that affects their paycheck. So I gave them that. I told them payroll was secure. I told them service staffing would be reviewed, not slashed. I told the technicians that efficiency mattered, but rushed work ruined trust. I told sales that I wanted fewer games and better follow-up. I told finance that clean paperwork would matter more than clever pressure. I told everyone that customers could feel respect the same way they could feel desperation. As I spoke, faces changed slowly, not into joy, into attention. That was better. Attention means a door opened. After the meeting, a senior technician named Carlos Ramirez approached me near the service bay. He was in his late 50s, white beard trimmed close, hands rough from 30 years of honest work. "You really mean that about service?" he asked. "Yes. We have been telling management for 2 years the schedule is overloaded. Then today we start fixing it." He held my gaze, measuring whether I was another polished voice passing through. Then he nodded once. That nod meant more to me than applause. By noon, the dealership had begun to breathe differently, not transformed. No business changes in 4 hours. But people walked with a little less weight in their shoulders. Walter's office became mine, though I left his framed photograph of the original lot on the wall. Respect is not weakness. It is memory with discipline. On the desk sat the keys to the pearl white convertible Emily loved. Walter had placed them there without comment. I picked them up once, felt their weight, then set them back down. They were not the point. That was what Emily had never understood. Nice things were not wrong. Letting nice things become a ruler for human worth was wrong. At 1:15, my phone lit up. Emily. A photo appeared first. The showroom. The convertible. Lauren standing beside it with a coffee cup. Then Emily's message, "Look what we found." I stared at the screen, and for the first time since the garage, I allowed myself a small smile. Not cruel. Not triumphant. Just aware. A second message came through. "You have to admit this is gorgeous." I typed back, "It is." She sent a laughing emoji, and then, "Maybe one day when you finally retire that relic." I looked through the glass wall of my office down into the showroom below. Emily stood near the car, one hand lightly on the door, her face bright with admiration. Lauren was beside her, pointing at the dashboard while a salesman approached. The salesman, Brian, glanced upstairs toward my office, as he had been instructed to do with any special customer requests during the transition. Our eyes met through the glass. I gave a slight nod. Not yet. Let the moment ripen. Emily had no idea I was 30 feet above her. Inside the office she believed belonged to someone else, watching the distance between assumption and truth shrink with every breath. She leaned closer to the car, smiling like a woman standing beside a dream. Then Brian said something to her, and she laughed, turning toward Lauren with the easy confidence of someone who had never imagined the man she pitied could own the floor beneath her shoes. I stood slowly, buttoned my jacket, and picked up the keys from the desk. The metal was cool in my palm. Downstairs, the showroom lights shone against the polished cars. The espresso machine hissed softly, and Emily's voice floated upward, admiring, certain, unaware. I walked to the office door, not rushing, not shaking, not rehearsing. Some moments do not need force. They only need a man calm enough to arrive exactly on time.